go over that in a second. I would, everybody look at me. JR, what are you doing? You're not looking at me. He's not, why is he looking at me? All right. Belay, are you looking at me? Look at me. All right, now, Mrs. Alama Weiss did make reference to the Friday. You know, I said, my third period, my apologies to my third period, because I don't see you ever. I used to know you at one time, but prior to our kind of breakup, you know, I did talk to the other two classes about that. I'll talk with you about it tomorrow. So I did talk to the other two classes about, you know, Friday, and there'll be an announcement on, and I wanted to talk with you today, but then I noticed that we didn't have class as usual again today. So I will talk with you about that tomorrow, and if you could wear something blue on Friday, that'd be terrific. But let's go over this book. I started putting this book together, Belay, many years ago. And the cover when I just a quick thing on the cover. When my son he's going to be 25. When he was just a little boy, I'd have him draw the cover, you know. And so now he's an adult. I still make him draw the cover, so you can see it. You can see he's waning in enthusiasm for it. You know, so his enthusiasm for drawing the cover has really declined. But he still does it at age 25. He has no choice. Unfortunately,
it's a rather large.
Yeah, I mean there's not much to it. The wife had to add the American flag. But go to page, it says on there, page 3, it says, topic outlines, themes, tracing a single theme throughout the course. This material here is provided by the college board itself. So, if you had this question, what's on the AP test? If you have the question, what's on the AP test, this is the outline that they offer. This is the outline that they argue that we should teach. Now, if you are looking at this and you're wondering, you know, what can I do with this? Well, what you can do with this is kind of look at it and say, you know, what kind of familiarity do I have with any of these topics? You know, do I feel like I don't know much? I mean, obviously, we probably don't know much about the pre-Columbian societies, largely because we didn't talk at all about them. You know, I would not fully encourage you to go back and read that. I mean, there may be a question or two about that on the test, but there's only so much we can do. Even transatlantic encounters, we didn't really sort of start to jump into this until we founded Jamestown in 1607. It is possible that there be questions on the test prior to 1607, you know, maybe a little bit of European history, you know, maybe a little bit about Native Americans in North America. Hopefully you'll remember something about that from somewhere else. But we don't have much on that we went over. The rest of the things, there you go. This is their outline. And then if you turn to page 7, they identify these themes. And these themes oftentimes are things that they kind of ask essay questions about. You know, economic transportation, globalization, you know, they have those. And you might want to, you know, take a look at those. But then I think what they do is they trace a theme through various things, through various time periods. You know, and in this case, it looks like they trace class, race, ethnicity, and gender. Now, the AP is very politically correct. That means that they are going to make sure that they ask gender questions, that they ask, you know, questions about African Americans, other minority groups. They're very, very, very conscious of diversity. You know, so I mean, this might be worth kind of looking at. You know, and you know, we tried to, particularly with African Americans, we're going to go towards the very end of the class, do the civil rights movement in the 1960s, and go back and talk about, you know, post Civil War, Reconstruction, and then back to Du Bois and Washington, which third period didn't get. And you know, trace it up through World War II and go up to the modern civil rights movement and the diversity there. So we're going to do a little bit with that. Gender issues we haven't done much with. We did the 19th Amendment, mentioned that. The AP is sort of famous for that. You know, they'll ask, you know, questions clearly you can expect one of the essay questions that's on the test to be about something with race or gender, something with race, gender, or ethnicity. So there you go with that. That's their own publication. And then if you turn to, and it's not in any particular order because I've changed this over the years, it says page 16. It follows page 12, which might not make a lot of sense. But these are just some test-taking tips that I found somewhere, and I included in there. Then go to a page that's unmarked, and I just added this year. It looks like this. I'll leaf through a couple of pages. Now, what a lot of kids will do, and up until this year, and I just changed this year, and what I did here is I divided American history into chronological eras. And if you look there, it goes through, discovery, colonization of British North America, the Revolutionary period, building the new nation. And what I did there is I wrote a sentence what I consider to be the focus. If you look at discovery and colonization, the focus of this period was the discovery of America by Europeans, subsequent colonization of North America. Special attention was given to the establishment and settlement of 13 British colonies. And then I sat there and I thought to myself, when I looked at that thing, I thought, okay, what are some things that maybe we didn't talk about that I wish I would have? And what are things that I did talk about that I want to make sure that they remember and are familiar with? And that's the list, right? That's the things you see. That's anything but what I just said. Thinking about that time period and thinking, okay, what did I talk about? What did we emphasize? What did I think was important? And what didn't I talk about that maybe might be important that I wish I would have or was in the book? And that's what I listed. Now, what kids have done in the past is like today, when we're reviewing, this is where they make notes. Like today, when we're reviewing for colonization, and we're talking about what happened in that time period, they'll take notes there. And then when we move to the Revolutionary period, they'll take notes. And there's not much room there anymore, because I wanted to put 2 per page. But this is what they kind of keep. And then when they go to study, let's say the night before the test, because the biggest challenge, frankly, for studying for the AP test is consolidating everything that you know. I mean, where do you start? Okay, let's say you have good intentions, or is an assumption, right? You have good intentions, I want to study. What do? Just sit down and just sort of look at stuff? The most challenging part of it is some sort of consolidation, getting it together. Now, if you have good notes that you've kept through the year, that's good. That's helpful. But, I mean, if you sit in the review session and you take these notes and, jot some things down, and then as you go over, even if you did this, and you said, okay, we made notes about colonization, and when I come to the next review session, I read everything that I have from the previous time. Even when you just sit down here, in the time that you generally screw around, and chat. If you just read over that, it's going to reinforce you and help you to remember. So I did this new this year. I mean, I did, these things and went through them, looked in your book, looked at things that were listed in the back of your book, and divided them to eras, right up into the post-war era. And I only take you to 1973. Now, it is true that the AP is going to ask questions up through and in the George probably W. Bush administration. Not George H. Bush, but W. Bush administration. Typically, we consider 20 years out to be history. And so we're in 2011, 1991. From 1991 until present, we consider that still to be kind of current events. AP doesn't look at it. They're going to throw a question or two in about that time period. In class, this is the best year we're ever going to have, as far as how far, except for the third period. As to how far we're going to make it. We're going to make it up through, the Vietnam War, where we talk about the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, the decision to go in there, up through
Robert
the civil rights
report to the office. Robert Mahan to the office.
Of the 1960s. And then I give the kids a paper that forces them to read about things like the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Watergate, incident and some other things. So you're going to get a smattering of things from the 70s, some solid things through the 50s and 60s, probably nothing in the 80s and beyond. Now, what you want to do about that, in the past, kids have kind of just got lucky. They just know stuff. It's kind of current events. But we'll do the best we can with that. And we'll see when the time comes, what to do. So that takes you through 73 with those things. I mean, even if you went through and looked at just the things that I've listed there, and saw which ones you knew and the ones you didn't know, and just try to find out something about the ones that you didn't know, it might be helpful. Even if you did it together. I mean, frequently the kids will, join together and like study. Now I know there's going to be a lot of tomfoolery, as they say, when that might happen. When you know what I'm saying, Luke? There's a lot of screwing around, but there's some mutual sort of thing. Well, what about the Anti-Imperialist League? I don't remember. Do you remember? Yeah, I remember. I think it was this. Let's look it up and read it together. There's something to be said for that. If you go to page 19, it says essay questions from historical eras. What I did there is I took the same historical eras, went back to the master list of all the AP questions that have been asked over the years, and gave you a free response essay that would chronologically fit in that time period. So if you want an example of what an essay question from a time period might look like, that's, an example. Now, the AP sometimes, they never ask the same essay twice, but some are really close, to the same essay. So that, might be helpful. I mean, you did some essays. You did an essay on the Revolution. You did an essay on Jackson. You kind of did an essay on sectional conflict and the causes of the Civil War. You did an essay on the Gilded Age, an essay on the Progressive Era. You are doing a take-home essay on boom and bust, and you are going to do a take-home essay on the New Frontier in Vietnam and those things. So you did some of those things. They always tell you it's not good to speculate about what's going to be the focus of like the AP test. But I just can't imagine that with the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, that there won't be some kind of essay on the Civil War. So I have this DBQ, and one of these review sessions we kind of go over it, that takes you through that. So I think that might be helpful. I mean, I don't know that, and these teachers that teach AP that talk on this listserv, they'll speculate all the time what they think it's going to be on the DBQ. The DBQ is a fourth of your test grade. So there's one document-based essay that's worth a fourth of what you get on the AP test. So, like, if you knew that, what it was going to be on, like sixth period does most of the testing, right? If you knew what it was going to be on, then, that would be good, so, but speculating, they always say don't speculate, but I just can't imagine that there won't be something on the Civil War. If you turn to page 22, again, these are in no particular order, it says presidents. Now you can see I did this with a typewriter. That's how long ago this was. That I did this. This is not the new stuff. I think I did it with a typewriter. But these are, I took every president and sat down and thought, okay, what would I want somebody to remember about that person's presidential administration? And then I listed them, from Washington through Adams, and some of them like William Henry Harrison. And on page 25, he died a little after, after 4 weeks. There wasn't much to say, but I think I go all the way through Nixon. Yes, I go all the way through Nixon. Nixon was elected in 68 and left office in 73. 73 is widely considered to be the end of the post-World War II era. And 73 to kind of like, I don't know, maybe 90, maybe now is the modern era. You have the Carter administration, the Reagan administration, George H. Bush, Clinton, and George W. Bush. And then if you go past those, page 34, political parties. I took the, I gave you a little discussion of the Democrat and Republican Party and how they came from the Federalists and the Republicans, and I described that a little bit. And then I identified 9 third parties that emerged. Now, I don't define them, but when you go through here, one of the things you could do is jot things down or look things up, or, if I don't know something or don't remember something, maybe I'll take a look at it. Your book had somewhere this little evolution of political parties I thought was good. I put down that in the corner, where you go from the Federalists to the National Republicans to the Whigs to the Republicans to present, the Democratic Republicans, the Democratic Republicans, the Jacksonian Democrats, the Democrats to present. Now, the next thing that I have there, and I was going to change this because I did this from a book that we used to use. We didn't always use Baylor. And the AP test. But what I did is I looked through old AP tests for italicized words. So the old published kind of AP tests that have been put in the past, there's italicized words. And I kind of go, well, if they're italicized, it must be important. Then I looked at our old text and I looked at words in there, and I put them in chronological order. And there's some of them are kind of vocabulary oriented, and I define them a little bit, and some of them are definitions of things. And there's there's a rhyme or reason in that they are chronologically organized in my mind. But other than that, they're just things. Now, what I'm going to do is when we have that Saturday review session, which will be like 3:30 or 4 o'clock. I'm going to try to help the music group. I know they've got a performance that night. I'll try to move it up or try to get you a little bit of time. I don't know what the makeup is or when you have to be here, but we've had people in costumes here for years, or with hair up and in makeup and things like that for years. And so I try to help you a little bit with that. But that Saturday we'll try to go through as many as we can. And then that Monday night after, like at 7 o'clock, we'll try to finish them. And this will give you, and it will be a long time, but this will give you an overview of the whole thing. Because they go right up through the 1960s, through the Great Society, right? And so I used to do it on subsequent Saturdays, but I don't know why this never worked out. This is Easter must be late this year, because you have that, and I don't want to do it 2 Saturdays ahead, so I used to do it on 2 Saturdays, one Saturday and finish it on the second Saturday. But I'm going to try it on Saturday and Monday night and see how it works out. And then after that, I have important women. This is my concession to gender. I just don't do enough on gender, and like I said, the AP is very conscious of being correct. So they are going to ask you questions. They're going to ask you about Jane Addams' 2Ds. She's on there. She's my favorite. Well, actually, Dorothea Dixon, my real favorite. But some others that maybe I didn't mention in class are discussed there and defined. You just take a look at this. It might be good. And then, and this will help Mr. Spinola, too, those of you that are studying for the AP Government, that should be helpful, too. If you do anything for AP Government, that should be helpful. These should be mutually beneficial.
This is Van Orden. Please call 5741. This is Van Orden, 5741.
But this is the best I've seen. This gives you what I would call quick and dirty explanations of a number of Supreme Court decisions. Many of these we talked about. Certainly Dred Scott versus Stanton. Others you read about. Some we didn't talk about. But these would be, it would just be good to flat out read this. Right? Then I found this book, if you go to page 53, again, no particular order, where they have these descriptions of what they call black agitators, important books, that we might see, Common Sense, Uncle Tom's Cabin, we did talk about that, The Influence of Sea Power Upon History, The Jungle, School and Society we didn't talk about, Wealth Against Commonwealth we didn't talk about, Silent Spring. The AP is going to ask you questions about literature and questions about books. I kind of gave up with literature because I kind of figured, well, Phil Randolph and whoever else, Lauren Nemai and the other people that teach you literature. Inevitably, there'll be a question or two that you'll get right, hopefully, because of your literature background. And so there'll be questions on that. If you turn the page, compromises. These, again, are short things that you can look at. Great historians, frankly, they don't ask you much about historians. But the panics, all the panics we do. And they are there. Big phrases, if you go to page 60. These are terms that you might see on the test. The peculiar institution, the American system, robber barons, many of those we talked about. Rebellions, we talked about several of them. That rebellions, that's one that they like too. They like these sort of popular uprisings. And then I just found these pages of notes. Like Hamilton's financial, these are just random, they're in order. But the Jackson administration, just kind of notes, the Civil War, that's one I'd look for. Reconstruction, progressivism, Theodore Roosevelt, maybe I should take these out, I don't know. But these are just kind of just some generic notes that I found somewhere. And then what I did is I took this book, and I have other copies. I have a bunch. I did give you one AP review book, but I have a bunch of others. I just didn't want to carry them down. The next time I come, I'll put them here. And they're similar to the one that you have, but if you want to borrow, you can borrow an additional AP review book. This one here, I have several copies of this. This one here has a 242-page outline of American history. Now that's a pretty extensive outline, right? It's very detailed. I took the very end of it and copied it here, right? And this is the stuff that I don't talk a lot about, so I put it here. Right? This also, now one thing I would say about this is this book has 5 practice tests. And the practice test at the end, it has the answers and why the right answers are right and why the wrong answers are wrong. Now, a practice test is an excellent way to study. You do the practice test, you kind of score it. The ones you miss, you go and look up. You can do that together too. If you were going into group outs and friends could come over and you could do that. That's a good thing. And this is a pretty good book. I probably have 5 or 6 copies of this, that you could be free to borrow. I have a bunch of copies of Barron's, the other ones, and they all have practice tests. And there is a practice test that the AP publishes, which I'll duplicate and give to you as well. And that's the closest thing that you'll get to what you'll see. Okay? I think this year, the AP test is going to limit their distractors, or the number of responses to 4. It used to be 5. But they're going to require, a more correct to get a higher level. I don't know why that's better, but I'll give you more information on that. And so if you go through these pages, that's just this duplicated. Now, if you go past there, page 99, again, I put foreign policy. And what I did is I thought, what are the big foreign policy things that occurred? And wrote a summary. Foreign policy to remember, most of those we talked about. The Venezuelan border dispute we did not talk about. You hopefully read about it in your book. World War I, the neutrality, the UN, right through the UN. And then the next one is legislation to remember. So these are kind of laws and acts, usually of Congress, that I thought might be helpful for you to have a summary of. And that goes through the civil rights of 1963. Now this, I don't know how much, this is the post-World War II. Again, I put a number of things in it. And these are just terms. Domino theory, people terms. I thought if you looked at that and you were looking at other things, these may be things that I think might be helpful for you. And then they got these sheets. She put I don't know why she put those pages at the back. Maybe I did that. I don't know. Maybe those are for notes. I don't know. I never did that before. But the Gateway, this is compliments of the Gateway School District, and I don't know how much cost they did that. I sent it down and they did it real nice, so I have to thank them for that. So it was probably a little bit, it's $1,500. But this is yours to keep. If it is helpful to you, great. If it is not, that's okay too. But this is something you might want to look at. The other thing I'd recommend, and we'll do just a wee little bit of reviewing in a second. The other thing I'd recommend is it wouldn't hurt to make a plan. What am I going to do? I'm going to study for this test. It's worth doing. It's worth studying. You sort of came this far. You plunked down the $87. You might as well study. And if you're going to study, you might as well approach it in a specific way. So if you say, well, gee, I'm going to study Friday in my 8th period study all for the AP test, the rest of until the time comes. That's good. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do this on this day and this on this day, and I'm going to kind of make a plan. I'm going to review for every session I go to. If I think it's going to be on the Revolution, I'm going to look at my own notes about the Revolution before I come to the session. So you do something on your own. I'm going to take a practice test. We're going to go Sunday to Starbucks and take a practice test 2 weeks before the test, and we're going to do it there, or take half of it and talk about it. So if you try to make a plan, it will be helpful. And this is early. This is early to do this. So that's good for us. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions on anything? Garnis, what are you doing up there? Well, he's dozing. Well, we're talking about the review session. Now, Garnis, go back, open your book, and go back to the colonial period.
Page 1.
Colonial period. And the AP is going, you can be sure. Yes?
Should we say AP test that you don't get
they stopped this year conducting anything on the multiple choice for incorrect answers.
So it's not -1/4 anymore?
It is no longer -1/4 to my knowledge. So that means that, now the downside to that means you can basically guess. Right? The downside to that is that when they make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they make it out of 100.
Leanna Lamia, report to the office. Leanna Lamia to the office.
They make it out of 180 points. And so they go down and they say, okay, 180 to and it's ridiculous, 117. Anybody that's scored in that's going to get a 5. And it ends up being about 10% of the students, typically. And so these are 350,000 students nationwide, and typically they are the best students in every school. So then we're saying is, okay, the best students in the junior class in pretty much every school that offers this class are taking this test, and we're going to make the top 10% scores a 5. Now, what I suspect is that number is going to be higher. It's still going to be 10%, but it's going to be higher than what it was before, and the same is going to be true of the 4s and the 3s, and they make it work out to about 9 to 10% get 5s, about 20 to 23 or 4% get 4s, same amount get 3s, and about 50% of the kids score a 1 or a 2. It is the most commonly flunked test, right? Of all the AP tests that are given, even like calculus and physics and all of those tests, the one that the most people, percentage-wise, don't make is history. That's because it's a large number. People don't take the calculus test for fun, all right? So it's a small number that take the AP calculus test, and most of them kind of know what they're doing. So more kids will score higher on that test. The history, it tends to be wider. So, you just do the best you can, but you should guess now. You have no reason not to. All right, if you go back to, just briefly, if you go back to the colonial time period, our discussion began in 1607. We started our discussion of the United States history with the Jamestown settlement in 1607 and British settlement of North America. Now, you can be certain that there will be questions about the Spanish settlement of North America, about the Native American indigenous people of North America, about the French settlement of North America. There'll be a token question about that. But for the most part, we start at 1607, we start with Jamestown, and we start with the motivations for the settlement of the Jamestown colony. Now, if you are thinking way back, and it was in August when we talked about this, way back to August when we talked about Jamestown, we said the settlement of Jamestown was different. It was significantly different than French settlement and Spanish settlement in one fundamental way. Do you, Phillips, remember the significant difference?